Change. Oh, it's inevitable. The only thing that's constant, right? Humanity has been naming that since the time of ancient Greek philosophers. But we don't have to read philosophy to know that, do we? Because we live it. I've changed. You've changed. Our world has changed. Prices have changed. Yeah, if you're trying to feed a teenage boy like I am right now, you should have amened when I said that. The workforce, the economy, culture, technology, trends, it's all changing all the time. Some of the changes we like, some of them we don't. Some of us are agreeable to change just for the sake of it, because it's fun and it's new. Others of us, we resist change with all that we've got. I'll tell you, I'm kind of a mixed bag on this one. I like trying new foods, going new places, getting new things. Well, some new things. I hate getting new technology. Yeah, I'm not the only one. See, I know some of you like scoping out when the new thing is coming out and you can't wait to get it. That is not me. I used the same laptop that took 5 minutes to boot up. It was missing some of the keys on the keyboard. Like, it got hot to the touch as you used it. It was kind of the size and weight of a small child. But I used it for years longer than I should have because I didn't want to change. For all of its quirks and faults, I knew that laptop. We'd been through a lot together. I didn't want to back things up and transfer files and learn a new machine. I didn't want to change, but I did know that it was inevitable. We all know that. Even if we don't want to admit it, we know it's true. And even if we don't enjoy the change, we can't deny that it creates excitement. Now, that could be the kind of excitement that causes joy and jumping, or it could be the kind of excitement when you want to throw a new laptop across the room, hypothetically speaking, of course. But regardless, change does create excitement. And change is what we're talking about this Easter, because Easter changes everything. Of course, it's a season of change as everything's turning from gray to green. We're seeing flowers start poking out from the frozen ground. We even proactively cause change this time of year. We take white eggs and dye them a whole rainbow of colors. We do some spring cleaning. We might switch out our wardrobes. But it's more than all of that. Easter changes the world. It changes what it means to be human. It changes eternity, because Easter is when death is conquered once and for all. Life wins. Love wins. So this year, as we approach celebrating Easter, we're going to look at people in the Bible who are changed by the approach to that first Easter. Of course, we're going to look at Jesus and talk about him. He is the reason for all of it. But we're also going to look at some other characters who are changed in this true story of Easter. And characters who change, well, that's what makes stories interesting. Real stories like this one of Jesus at Easter, and made-up stories like the ones we enjoy in books and movies. Once upon a time, I studied literature, and we talked about dynamic versus static characters. Hang with me, don't tune out. We're not going to diagram sentences or anything, all right? Dynamic characters are the ones who change, and they make a story dynamic. Static characters don't change, and they're about as exciting as watching static or listening to it. If you're my age or older, you remember that, right? Like that awful jarring sound or the look of static when you couldn't quite pick up the station that you wanted. Nobody wants that. So our stories are full of dynamic characters. Take my favorite Disney story, Beauty and the Beast, for example. This is full of dynamic characters. The main ones, Beauty, also known as Belle, and, well, the Beast. I guess that's pretty self-explanatory. They change. And then there are supporting characters who are also dynamic. We've got Cogsworth, the clock, and Lumiere, the candelabra. And then there's a whole other tier of characters. They're not really main characters or supporting characters, I'm honestly not sure what we call them. But my favorite of these in Beauty and the Beast is a little guy named Chip. He's a teacup with a chip in it, right? Characters like Chip, they're the other guys, the lesser known characters. But their amount of screen time does not equate to their amount of change. They can be profoundly, completely changed by the story they're in, even if they're only in it for a few minutes. And the same thing is true of the Easter story. Those are the people we're looking at this year, the ones who get just a verse or two in the Bible, but whose lives are changed by the story of Jesus. And as we look at their transformations, we'll see what kind of change might be possible for us. Because let's be honest, most of us, we're not main character material. We're not even supporting actor or actress material. In the story of life, most of us are the other guys. And Easter can profoundly, completely change us today like it changed them then. See, Jesus knew his time on earth was coming to an end. So he was spending time with his followers. We also call them disciples. He was teaching them and trying to prepare them for what was coming. He was also trying to prepare himself. So he led his disciples. He went himself to a garden so all of them could pray. And that's where one of the supporting characters, Judas, showed up. Now, Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas came to the garden, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priest and the Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Well, this scene shifted quickly from a peaceful garden of prayer to a confrontation with armed soldiers and religious leaders. Jesus intercepts them, and he basically tries to say, hey, you're here for me. Let the rest of these people go. So they're at a standoff having this conversation, and then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Jesus commanded Peter, put your sword away. Then the detachment of soldiers with its commander and the Jewish officials arrested Jesus. Things escalated quickly here. And unfortunately, this is just the first and probably smallest act of violence that will characterize the Easter experience. And it's suffered not by Jesus, although he's going to face much worse later. Not even by Simon Peter or Judas, but by Malchus, a servant. I mean, he's not even named in other places in the Bible. This incident, it shows up in all four Gospels. Those are the books of the Bible that tell the story of Jesus: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All of them tell about what happens here, but several of them don't even name the man, just his position, servant of the high priest. He's a little-known person in a little-known part of this story, getting just one line here. And in his culture, he was in a low position. He was a servant or a slave. And his life has changed, but not in a good way, at least at first. His ear is cut off. That just seems bizarre to me. Like, I don't know about you, but when I read that, I immediately think of the painter Vincent van Gogh. You know, he cut his own ear off. That was in the 19th century. And it seems really weird to me, so I looked into it. Did you know that cutting ears off was a common punishment, even in our own country in the century before Van Gogh? And then back in ancient Assyria and Babylonia, long before that? I mean, I don't think this is really about an ear being cut off, though. I think it's about the damage that one human can do to another, even when they're close to Jesus. See, here's a man who is standing in a garden near Jesus, possibly through no choice of his own. Maybe he's just following orders, and he becomes a victim of violence. He's harmed in a way that is painful, debilitating, and life-altering. And here's the kicker. He's harmed even though he's close to Jesus. Actually, he's harmed precisely because he's close to Jesus. If he weren't there, he would still have two ears. His proximity to Jesus causes his pain. That's a hard truth to acknowledge, to stomach. But it's happened more times than we know. Not literally, of course. Malchus is the only one who stands across from Jesus in the garden on this night, gets dismembered by a sword. But so many people. People throughout history, people even in this room, have suffered pain because of their proximity to Jesus. There's so many ways that it's happened in so many places for so long. There are people who've been harmed within some sort of church community. I mean, we see this in documentaries all the time, right? From long-established churches to new startups and cults. Too often what is presented as church becomes a place that hurts. In extreme cases, there's all kinds of abuse. It's awful. There's corruption, there's manipulation, war. We could debate how many people have died in the name of wars about Jesus. I'm not a historian. I'm not equipped to engage in that debate. But every life that has been lost matters. Even if we can't say for certain how many it's been, we know it's been a lot. The Crusades killed well over 1 million. The 30 Years' War in Europe in the 17th century killed millions. The numbers are so big, the land's so foreign, the year so long ago, it's hard to truly appreciate the cost. So even though the cost is not literal lives, it's easier to note the casualties that happen here, in our context, in our day. The people who are cut not with literal swords, but with words. The Bible tells us that the words of the reckless pierce like swords. Far too many people could say that the reckless words of Christians have pierced them like a sword. They may still have their literal ears, but they struggle to hear the good news of Jesus because of how they've been harmed. Maybe that's even been your experience. Maybe you've been on the receiving end of reckless words from people who thought they were sharing about Jesus. Maybe they were sharing truth, but without grace, and those always have to go together. Maybe they didn't know what they didn't know about who you are and what you've done and what you've been through, and they spoke recklessly without realizing the damage it would do. Or maybe they thought they were saying something encouraging and comforting that ended up being devastating. If you've been hurt by your proximity to Jesus, I'm so sorry. I know I'm no one special, just a Christ follower and a pastor. But on behalf of other Christ followers and pastors, I would love the opportunity to say, we're sorry. I'm sorry. I don't have to know the details of your story to feel guilt and shame and heartbreak over your pain. And you might be thinking, it's not my apology to give, and you might be right, or you might not. I've been here for 20 years now, long enough to hear the phrase, if you stick around me long enough, then I'll let you down. It's something our leadership has said, not as an excuse, but as an acknowledgement of our own brokenness. See, we highly value being authentic and real around here. I've been here long enough to hear it and to experience it. I've been the one who was let down. And I've been here long enough to inflict it. Not purposefully or vengefully, of course, but the intention doesn't matter much, does it? Whether I've let you down with my actions or my omissions, still hurts. The damage is still done. And I'm sorry for how I and others like me, people who represent Jesus and his church, have hurt you and others. And in that way, I feel a little like Peter. See, sometimes we're like Malchus, the one who gets hurt. And sometimes we're like Peter, the one who causes the hurt. Now, Peter, he does not fall into our category of little-known characters. He is definitely in the supporting role category. It's hard to do an Easter series and not talk about Peter. He is known for his passion and his zeal for Jesus, which is what we see on full display in this story. Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. Peter is pure, passionate impulse. He is Jesus' guy. And he has watched an armed group approach his leader, his teacher, his friend, and his knee-jerk reaction is to draw his sword and strike. Who knows if he was actually aiming for Malchus or his ear? Chances are, Malchus was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Remember, Peter didn't enter this garden looking for a fight. He came here to pray with Jesus. He is not out to do harm. On the contrary, for the last several years, he's been traveling around this area, sharing the teachings and the healings of Jesus with other people. Peter is all in, completely committed. He wants everybody to know about Jesus. He just finds himself in this situation and he lashes out. Pure emotion, no reflection or intentionality, and he hurts somebody. Sometimes that's what happens when we get maybe a little too excited, isn't it? We get riled up and we go too far. Our excitement for something that starts out positive ultimately causes damage. We've probably all been there at some point, right? Did you know that almost happened with something that we hold in high regard around here? Something we look forward to, that we reserve for special occasions, that we delight in. Krispy Kreme donuts. Yes, of course people are passionate about these pillows of pure sugar. My husband was recently running some errands and he had like a half-hour gap to fill. And then I got a picture of the conveyor belt of fresh, hot donuts. The lady working had just handed him one for free. Before it ever touched the display case or had time to leave a sticky spot on his hand, it had already melted in his mouth. He is not the only one who loves those. In fact, they were so popular in the 90s that Krispy Kreme expanded rapidly. What had been a hit here in the Southeast United States spread quickly all over the country, even around the globe. There was so much excitement, they just kept going bigger and farther, and it was too much. In 2005, they posted millions in losses, navigated an accounting scandal, closed stores, saw stocks collapse. The Forbes magazine headline was "Crispy Gets Creamed." Lost 90% of its value. Their zeal for helping as many people as possible experience the sweet deliciousness actually ended up causing harm. Now, it happened with donuts, which, all kidding and pastoral exaggeration aside, isn't that big a deal in the grand scheme of things. But when it happens with faith in Jesus, it's a really big deal, and it can have devastating consequences. And our zeal for helping as many people as possible experience the truth and goodness of Jesus, we sometimes end up causing harm. Now, by we, I don't necessarily mean you and me, although I think we're all capable if we're not careful. I mean the collective group of people who call themselves Christians or followers of Jesus. As a group, we've often been people who accost others with words about Jesus too aggressively, too soon, with too much pressure. And when we do that, instead of our excitement being contagious, it becomes a barrier. See, at PCC, we really are passionate about Jesus. It's kind of in our name. And we are totally committed to our mission to reach people who don't go to church. It's why we do everything that we do the way that we do it. We actively and intentionally seek to identify and remove barriers that keep people from Jesus. So we give people space to check out church and faith in Jesus in a way that's comfortable for them, on their own timeline, with no pressure from us. If you're a person who doesn't usually go to church, we're really glad that you're here. We've made our church for you. And we hope that you come to a place of sharing our faith in Jesus. We think there's nothing that's more important than that. But that's for you to determine when you're ready. We're here to help, not to get in the way. So even though we are passionate about Jesus, we're going to be really careful not to overwhelm you. And certainly we're going to try not to harm you with our zeal. Because that's what happened with Peter. He acted out of his passion for Jesus. He saw Jesus being attacked, and he felt that primal instinct to protect him. Peter may have been the first of Jesus' followers to feel that way, but he is certainly not the last. In fact, when I kind of look at our culture today, I see a whole lot of well-intentioned people who love Jesus and seem to feel the need to protect him. Now, I do think we are all called to stand up for our faith with courage when that's necessary. But Jesus, he doesn't need us to defend him or protect him now any more than he needed Peter to in the garden. Did you notice how Jesus reacted when Peter drew his sword? Jesus commanded Peter, "Put your sword away." In Matthew's version of this incident, it says, "Put your sword back in its place," Jesus said to him, "for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels?" Jesus commanded Peter to put down the sword, and he pointed out the obvious. If Jesus wanted to, he could call out to God the Father, who has at his disposal legions of angels who could more than take care of this little group of humans who've shown up with torches and weapons. It's nothing compared to the power that Jesus has access to. He didn't need Peter to defend him with a sword. And that makes me wonder how much he needs us to defend him with our swords, namely our words. In our culture, many Christ followers have adopted a defensive position with their faith, staying alert, looking for attacks on our faith, on Jesus, ready to pounce on whoever poses a threat. But I wonder if Jesus would say to us now, like he said to Peter then, "Put your sword away. If I want to send down angels to defend myself, I can." So here's where I am. If Jesus doesn't feel the need to defend himself, who am I to think I need to defend him? He's God. He's got it if he wants it. And if he doesn't want to defend himself, I trust that he knows what he's doing. He certainly knows more than I do. In this story, it's clear. Jesus is not interested in being protected, but he's very interested in bringing healing and salvation to others. In Luke's version of the story, immediately after Peter cut off the ear, Jesus answered, "No more of this." And he touched the man's ear and healed him. Jesus touched Malchus' ear and healed him. Now, I don't know the details of how this worked. Like, did he reattach the dismembered ear? Did he touch the spot on his head where an ear used to be and grow a brand new one? I don't know. I don't think it matters. What I do think matters is what Jesus is and is not focused on in this moment. His arrest and death are imminent. But Jesus is not focused on fighting back or defending himself. He is focused on preventing any more damage and healing the damage that's already been done. See, Malchus got hurt because of his proximity to Jesus, but not because of Jesus himself. Jesus didn't cause the harm. In fact, he denounced it. "No more of this," he yelled. "Put away your sword." This is really important because this isn't just about what happened in a garden 2,000 years ago. It's about what happened in your life too. Maybe you got hurt because of your proximity to Jesus and his followers. But Jesus didn't hurt you. He didn't cause the pain. In fact, he probably denounced it, crying, "No more of this. No more. No more church corruption or abuse or manipulation. No more well-intended but misguided impulses or words that cause harm. No more zealous followers who cause brokenness and pain. No more." That is the cry of Jesus' heart. No more of that for us. No more of that for you. But for himself, he knew there was even more for him. No more for us. Even more for him. Because that's who Jesus is. He didn't want one more man to be struck with a sword in that garden that night. And yet he willingly went into custody, knowing he was going to be struck over and over again, that he was going to be killed. He took on even more violence and pain, all the while wanting no more of it for Malchus or you. What Jesus wanted and delivered for Malchus was wholeness and restoration. What he wants for you is wholeness and restoration too. And in the rest of the Easter story, that's exactly what he delivers. In the days immediately following this incident in the garden, Jesus makes a way for all of humanity to be restored to a right relationship with God. And it's up to us to accept it and move to Jesus. See, what we learned from Malchus is that being close to Jesus isn't enough. Malchus was close to Jesus. That's how he got hurt in the first place. Being close to him was not enough to change his life in a positive way. Not because Jesus isn't powerful enough to cover the distance. No, in the Bible, we see Jesus raise people from the dead and heal them without being beside them. Jesus doesn't have to be close to us to restore us, but we have to be with him to live into the full restoration he wants for us. Some of us are close to Jesus, but not close enough. And as long as you stay on the periphery, you'll get to see Jesus. You might get to hear him. You might get hurt by his well-meaning, committed followers. You'll know about Jesus, but that is not the same as knowing Jesus. If we push through and actually get to Jesus, we experience positive life change, the wholeness and the restoration that he offers. That's Malchus' story. He knew about Jesus, but it wasn't until he actually had an encounter with him that he was changed for good. Today, are you where Malchus was that night in the garden? Are you close to Jesus? Is it time to actually come to him? Or are you Peter? Are you passionate about Jesus? Maybe to an extent that's caused damage. I've been both. The one close to Jesus and hurt by my proximity to him, and the one who in all my zeal has hurt or in some way kept people from Jesus. Not with an actual sword, but with words of judgment, pride. Whichever you are, whichever man you identify with, this Easter, let's be changed. Let's commit to helping people get to Jesus, not by defending him or trying to protect him, but by making a clear and easy path for people to get to him. Let's invite them to church with love and grace, not guilt or shame. And this Easter, let's make sure that we are not just in proximity to Jesus, but personally connected to him. We can even take a step toward that right now, because he's here. He's with us. The presence of God is with us when we gather to worship him like we're gathered right now. And we trust that he's at work in this place, that he's moving in our midst, that he's the same God who can restore us like he restored Malchus. So as we sing this last song, make this a moment when you sing these words, not to anybody else, but directly to Jesus, when you connect with him and open yourself up to be changed.
You are here, moving in our midst, and I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place, and I worship you. I worship you. You are here, moving in our midst, and I worship you. Oh, I worship you. You are here, you're working in this place, and I worship you. I worship you. 'Cause you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Oh, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart, and I worship you. Oh, I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you, and I worship you. Oh, you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Oh, you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Oh, I know, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Oh, you are the waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper.
Whether you're Malchus or you're Peter, whether you've been close to Jesus without actually knowing him, or your passion for Jesus has caused damage, let's commit to being changed this Easter. Because when we do, we'll experience the wholeness and restoration that Jesus offers. And we'll be able to share it with those around us in a way that helps them to truly come to know Jesus. So thanks for being here today. Come back next week and bring a friend as we continue our Changed series. We'll see you then.